So, Judy Marks, we had a chance to meet a few times as we've both been invited to our friend Jeffrey Sonnenfeld's Yale CEO summits. And we've had a chance to sit proximate to one another a couple of times. And I've just been amazed by your story. Engineer, turns out to be a great manager, too. Great, turns out to be a very, very good business organizer. And you've had this unique situation of a term you don't hear very much about anymore, and I wonder what your thoughts are. And that term is conglomerate. You've worked for big companies, you've worked in all capacities, and you took over Otis at a time that it was part of a big conglomerate, and I suspect with a plan to spin it out. Have conglomerates gone out of favor, Judy Marks?
Jim, it's great to be with you today. I think everything has a time and a place, and I think in today's era, conglomerates really are something where in the past the sum of the parts was even more important because you had flexibility, you had counter cyclicality. At this point in time, I think what investors are telling any of us in the public markets and maybe even in the private markets are they want to make that choice on capital allocation. So they want focused companies. They want companies that are dedicated to their missions versus having a layer of a conglomerate making those capital allocation decisions. You see it with GE, you're seeing it with Honeywell now. A lot of the industrials have gone through it, but you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it in consumer product goods. You're seeing it across the board.
Yeah, I think the interesting point you make, the most interesting point you make there is about the investors now are sophisticated and don't buy the argument that we can better allocate capital. Let us make those decisions, and we'll view it on a area by area performance basis, not just on a mutual fund kind of a cast that a conglomerate might appear to be.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on. And listen, investors are sophisticated, and they understand focus, and it's that focus that's allowed us to obviously return to our independence, to stay focused on our markets and our segments, and to drive those returns.
Getting to chat with you a little bit about it, what an interesting company Otis is. I love how you tell the story of its history, and for a company that everyone knows, I think I was mouth open to hear about the scope and scale of what Otis is today and what your footprint is globally. I think you told me that you have over 70,000 people doing business in over 200 different countries. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, I think you'll find we are the ultimate iconic brand, founded almost 173 years ago in Yonkers, New York, by Elijah Otis. It was family founded, family run for a long time before we went public. But it's one of those inventions, and what he invented was the safety brake that allowed passengers to feel safe using elevators. It's one of those inventions that has not only spawned an industry, but has allowed cities to rise. If you think about just everywhere,
Literally and figuratively, huh?
urbanization taking over. So yeah, now again in September will be 173 years later. We're still the industry leader, but we have found ways not just to be part of construction and urbanization where cities are rising, but to make sure people are moving safely throughout the globe. 72,000 colleagues, 200 countries and territories. And of those 72,000, 45,000 are our field professionals who mainly spend their time on service, making sure elevators are safe, reliable, and continue to last as buildings continue to age.
And I imagine the behind the scenes things that go into the safety of the transportation devices that you put in place and maintain is changing pretty dramatically. We've gone this far in our conversation without mentioning AI, but I imagine it's ever present in your mind and in your engineers' minds in terms of how you can use it to make things safer, to make things less expensive to operate, and to maximize mobility among folks. And it seems to me that with you being so focused on, particularly on cities rising, how the urbanization trend that continues plays into your hand.
Yeah, so Jim, 2.5 billion people a day use our product. They
Wow.
do it, yeah, they do it autonomously. So if you think about, especially as we go into this AI era, and people are so worried about job creation, job destruction, skills changing, until the 50s, there was an elevator operator in every one of these elevators. So
Hmm.
we were one of the early autonomous technology providers. And again, where people just trust us, whether it's our elevators, our escalators, our moving walkways, and don't think twice, which is what we want about movement, about whether it's in their apartment, their condominium, their office, in an airport, in a manufacturing facility. We really have this ubiquitous product. But with this ubiquitous product and offering comes the responsibility to stay relevant and to stay in a leadership position and to always adopt new technologies. And so AI has an absolute, what I believe will be a significant impact in how we operate our business, in how we work, and we have to
Hmm.
change the way we work to be able to take advantage of that. We'll still be human led because of safety and because of regulatory code that mandates this safety. There won't be a time in the near future where you won't need our service mechanics or people doing these installations for all the right reasons, but it'll be human led and AI enabled. So we will be, and we already are, applying AI to make ourselves more productive, more efficient. On any given day, we've got about 10,000 elevator installations or refurbishments going on. On any given day, we've got about 200,000 service calls going on. So it's the ultimate distributed business, local in every city and suburb around the globe. So AI is going to play a part in productivity. It's clearly going to play a part, as it is for every company in your own enterprise. How do you do transactions? How are you using agentic AI versus generative AI to help you move your business along? But one of the things we're really driving is to make sure, and this is from the top, at the enterprise level, we want AI to be part of our offerings, to make a difference for our customers, which are mainly businesses, condominium associations, developers, architects, facilities managers. We want our products to become smarter, to become more autonomous, and to be able to create a different passenger experience using voice, using video, using AI agents to make the passenger experience that much more valuable. So it goes across the spectrum. Our elevators are connected. We service about 2.5 million elevators in our service portfolio. Of the 22 million in the world, we have the largest service portfolio, and about half of those are connected. So we are getting real time Internet of Things data to understand performance real time, to be able to do predictive monitoring and maintenance, but also to make the ride more effective, to stop breakdowns, to fix problems before they happen. But again, to make the customer relationship more valuable, but also to make it better for passengers. But wouldn't it be amazing? And we've shown this. We actually demoed this on a new product in China late last year. If you could walk up to an elevator and say, "I'm here to see fill in the blank, my cardiologist," and it says, "Okay, is it Dr. Smith?" And you say yes. It says, "Please enter the elevator," and it takes you to the floor. And as
Hmm.
you think about that kind of experience, as you think about selecting music and the mood in the elevator real time, it just gives you that
How
ability no
about
matter.
lighting and scent?
But you think about aging populations and
Don't
the
make fun
more.
of me now.
I love aromatherapy, and I can see where we have a connectivity here with 1-800-Flowers. I'm with you. We do have the ability. It's funny during COVID. Funny story. Obviously, everyone kept asking us, "Well, you need to put air filtration. You need to put fans in elevators." And I would look at all these customers and I said, "They've always been there. You just wanted us to cover them up for all these years in terms of not
Yes.
being visible." So we've got the opportunity for aromas, for scents. Uh, on average, we've got someone for about 8 seconds in the globe.
Is that
Uh,
8 seconds? So, what about entertainment? What role do you think entertainment and the changes therein would impact your business going forward? That is entertainment while people are using your devices.
You bet. I mean, we already have some relationships where we do, a tremendous amount of the ability to broadcast in a cab, in an elevator cab, and you can do that from the building. You can do that remotely. You can do that via digital marketing. You could do that in a let's just say in an office building where one of the restaurants wants to have a lunchtime special, so do that real time so people can say, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to try that." Or hazards, weather coming, emergency situations. When you're in mobility, you're dealing with entertainment, you're dealing with real-time data, you're dealing with people's egress, and believe it or not, lunchtime is the most trafficked time because you've got people going in both directions versus morning rush and evening rush in office or in residential. So about more than half of our portfolio is residential, but think about that as multifamily apartments, condominiums around the globe where many people live obviously in non-single family homes.
Yeah, 33% growth in your core business is awfully attractive. Tell me, we're hearing a lot about future technologies and the yield they'll bring to us in terms of compute, in terms of robotics. You've been in the robotics business for a long time. How do you think about when you hear the term robotics? Everyone thinks about someone who looks like a human and can do a lot of the tasks that we'd rather not have to do ourselves or can better be done by robots. But you've been in the robotics business a long time. How do you think about robotics?
Yeah, so we think about robots as another, literally another stakeholder set, another set of passengers for us as humanoid robots and other robots continue to develop. And so we've architected for the ability for robots to be able to use our elevators without having to tactily or look like a human or push a button. So we actually have an interface that we sell on as a subscription service for robots to do food service in hotels, room service, to do supplies where there's not enough labor in hospitals. And
So you're thinking about your role in moving the robots.
You bet. You bet. And especially when you think about, again, the aging population and humanoid robots and people wanting to stay in their homes longer or moving to senior facilities, I think you're going to see humanoid robots over the next 5 to 10 years move beyond manufacturing and industrial.
This is something I'm sure you know an awful lot about, but I'm just learning about it. I'm on a board of a healthcare system here in New York, the NYU Langone Health System. And we're looking to replace a hospital that we have here on Long Island. And I naively thought, well, if we could get a big enough piece of land and really spread this out, and no. For a hospital to operate efficiently, they want vertical.
You bet.
And the core of that, literally and figuratively, is elevators. Because it's much easier to operate a hospital. They don't have to go long lateral distances if they can move a patient from emergency into imaging, into OR, into recovery, and back to a patient room. That works so much better vertically, I've learned. That's something you and your engineers have known for a long time.
Yeah, so hospitals are a key segment for us for a variety of reasons. One is you need obviously a larger elevator, a larger cab to be able to fit in hospital beds, stretchers, et cetera, wheelchairs. And, people take for granted here in the U.S. ADA access. There's a reason why elevators are larger here than they are, like if you've ever been anywhere else in the world and you walk into a hotel and you're like, I can barely fit myself and my bag, my luggage in. And it's because of our laws here in the U.S. But it's that those laws actually laid the groundwork for hospitals to become a very important part. And the more advanced hospitals now are including robotics. And the last question we get asked, because it's all about traffic flow, traffic flow, and that's what we optimize. That's what our AI algorithms do on a real-time basis, understand when an event's letting out, maybe in the auditorium of the hospital, if they have such a thing. So we make sure we send all the elevators there. But more importantly, what the debate some of the hospitals are having with us is, should they dedicate a bank to robotics? So just the robots will use it that do all the delivery, again, of the linens, of the consumable items, and because there's not enough labor for all the orderlies, they can't fulfill that. Luckily, our logic allows the ability for us to tell a robot either go in the elevator when there's a human there or to wait. But that's really just that's a rule you set based on how you want to use it.
Break out the barbecue and get fired up for a season full of mouth-watering meals. Stock up on gourmet grillers and round out the spread with delicious desserts. Make summer sizzle.
So how early in the planning of a hospital are you involved, or would you and your engineers want to be involved? Are you working with architectural design firms who specialize in those areas early on? Do you meet before there's even a plan or an assignment to advance the area of study and ideation about how to prepare for the future? Where do you guys get excited, and how early do you get involved?
We get involved really early. You use the word core. The core of a building tends to be the elevator banks. And that's actually been one of the, as you think about people remodeling office to residential, which you're seeing a lot in the city and other places right now, since COVID, we're still in that core of the building. And the more traffic we can move with the least hoistways, but be able to move that many people
What was that
simultaneously.
term? Hoistways?
We call it a hoistway, that big cement,
Yep.
that core.
Uh huh.
We call that a hoistway. That's the first thing, once you get past the architects and the developers and the financing, the first thing that tends to get poured is the foundation and the hoistway. So if
Mm-hmm.
you drive around, anywhere on, any city, you'll see something coming up out of the ground first. That's the elevator hoistway.
Yeah.
So we get involved early in the ideation because we want to, again, if more space can be dedicated in a hospital to patients, to obviously revenue generating testing, whatever's appropriate, and we can move more people in less space and still meet all the codes and make them feel comfortable, that's a win-win. So we do work very early on spec position, working with architects, working with developers across every vertical. But then
So
we try
do
to
you, as a
optimize.
company,
Yeah.
convene those other professions from time to time?
Yeah, we're all part, when you think about the building industry, whether it's the AIA, whether it's the general contractors, there is quite an ecosystem on the construction side to optimize. And then obviously you have all of the people who have to make this pencil out financially, right? You have the developers. But these people, these are real estate professionals. And, there's times we feel we're part of that, and we are. And then there's also times that we're part of kind of the facilities and property management piece where we provide service. But we'll sign service contracts with condo associations, with individual homeowners in lots of countries. It's the full gamut here. From we don't have a single customer that's over 1% of our revenue, which is a great diversification strategy. But it also means we've got a lot of customers.
You mentioned regulators before. Sounds to me like regulators are your friends, and it sounds to me like regulation means different things in different parts of the world.
Yeah, actually, regulation means different things in different cities in the U.S., let alone different parts of the world. There's a
Mm.
code in New York City versus a code in Chicago. When you're in the life safety business, which we are, so you think about what our engineers are architecting for and designing for, we don't ever want someone to think twice or have a fear of stepping in or using our product, stepping on, stepping in, or using our product. There is a very healthy unit code, regulated code to protect that. So we live up to that code when we engineer, when we design, when we develop, manufacture, and install. And then the service regulations are even a different set of codes. They're different all over the world, which is, it's a good moat in terms of a business person because
Sure.
we have the ability to serve all those, whereas others, would take years to figure, to really master that. But when you get into service, the unique part about our business is the regulatory requirement is on the customer. So if you think about that little inspection certificate when you walk in an elevator, it's up to the owner to make sure they have a service contract with one of our providers, ourselves or some of our competitors, and that they have that's kept up to code so that they can pass their annual inspection so they can operate. That requirement's on the customer, which makes it, whether the building's full, whether there's only one tenant, they still need to keep that current, which is why our maintenance offering, which is a subscription, obviously an annual maintenance offering that we could sign for more than 1 year, we offer around the globe. And that maintenance business is, again, that's the key foundation of our revenue. On top of that, things break that may or may not be in a comprehensive contract or a basic contract. And it's just like when your car breaks, you take it back. Here, you can't take it back. We come and we do a repair, a break fix repair. And then when elevators, the buildings last many decades. So like any technology, as elevators age, they need to be upgraded. And at about the 20-year point, they need to be modernized and refurbished.
So 20
Um,
years, the average life
yeah,
before a
and
major
there's about a
refurb.
little over 9 million of those 22 million units are over 20 years old and are entering that window, which creates a great business opportunity for us, but also, an obligation in terms of mobility to make sure that an elevator, obviously, as it ages, it potentially needs more repair, which is why you get to a point we work with our customers on a capital planner so that we can refurbish it in a live building, obviously, while people are using maybe the next one in the elevator bank. But it's a lot different than construction when you're replacing an elevator in a building where people work or live, and we do that regularly. And that's probably our fastest growing market.
With the storied brand that you have there at Otis, do you get a disproportionate share of new work, new installations? Because people, we're using Otis elevators as part of their marketing pitch on a new luxury condo on an office building or such?
We like to think so, but we still have to win. It's a competitive market. We still have to win our fair share. A lot of things in life happen in an elevator. We're in a lot, as you talked about entertainment in the cab. You think about everyone's got a story, right? Where there's probably not a commercial or a movie we're not part of as well. But yeah, it is we think it's a differentiator, and we do have, for some of the marquee facilities, people depend on us. They depend on us for our brand, but I think more importantly that they depend on us for our quality and our safety and our longevity. I mean, we're committed to this market. This is what we do. 72,000 people every day. This is what we wake up to do, and this is what we'll continue to do going into the future.
It seems to me in an age when we're all talking about, and you and I have been part of those conversations in a couple of cases now, where everyone's talking about we all hear about the promise of AI, and I'm personally very excited about that. I said to my wife Mary Lou just over a month ago, I said we have to work hard to stay fit and healthy for the next 5 years, because in those 5 years I suspect a lot of breakthroughs in science and health and longevity will happen as a result of these new computing powers. But I also think it's true that we hear all the time about the angst of the disruption that's coming with AI. Speaking to college students often as I get to, there's real anxiety there about futures. It would seem to me that your field professionals are sitting there saying, I did a pretty good job of picking a career here because I'm going to be needed. I'm going to use AI as a tool, but I'm going to be needed for it.
I hope so, and that's obviously part of our pitch as we continue to grow our business.
And recruit.
We can't linearly grow our business and linearly simultaneously grow our field professionals. There's just not enough people either interested, trained, apprenticed, or ready to go. So that we know, and our field professionals, this is a discussion I have with them, know they need to become more productive by enabling AI and all the other tools and technologies we've put in front of them to make them more productive. Listen, you and I are probably a similar vintage. I'll go with that. And we've seen a lot of technology.
I probably have you by quite a bit, but go ahead.
Well, you've been doing this 50 years. I'm only on 42. So
you're a young upstart.
I'm going with it. I'm feeling young right now. But you think about all the technology changes we've seen, and everybody, you name it, right? The internet, everything. I mean, I used punch cards my first semester in engineering school. So you talk about everything we've witnessed in life, and sure, some skills will change, some demands will change, but just like elevator operators went away, there are other opportunities for people. So, my advice to these students now is, first of all, you're coming out of university or wherever you're coming, even out of high school right now, which is where most of our field professionals come out of. You're coming out digitally native, you're coming out digitally ready. You actually can mentor many of us on where we're going to apply and take this technology. You actually have a head start. Don't, especially for those coming out of university, don't just say, well, this is, and none of us have had the same career path. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. We all had to do entry level work. I think their entry level work is going to look radically different than my entry level work as an engineer or your entry level work. But it'll still be, you have to learn the business you're in. You have to learn certain things, and you have to learn by doing. Their doing is going to be digitally doing. They're going to have an agent next to them, an AI agent, that's probably going to let them learn and adapt and move quicker and learn more faster than we ever did. So I'm actually excited for this next generation. Change is never easy. It's not easy in my enterprise. I'm sure it's not easy in your enterprise. It won't be easy for these 20 somethings. But guess what? They've come through the last 5 or 10 years going through a lot of change as they've been growing up. I think they're going to be more adaptable. And it's up to us to find better ways to have them start. But an entry level role will look very different than it ever did. And they may be doing something very different than they thought they went to university to do. But I think we can find a lot of people who can say that no matter how many years they've been in business.
What advice do you give to the young college graduates that you run across or soon to graduate in terms of they might not have gotten this, they may be digitally native, but they're not AI native?
I would tell them the same thing I tell everybody. This is going to radically change. AI is going to have, in my mind, the biggest impact on our lives of anything in my lifetime. And I, like you, I've seen so much change, but I agree with you on the compute ability and what that's going to mean to medicine and pharmaceutical. I think it's going to mean, when you think about financial, business, banks, all of that, I think it's going to create new products, innovations that we can't even imagine today. And it's not going to take years. It's going to take days and weeks. And that change curve is going to be radically different. So I tell them, be a lifelong learner, and you get to start that right now, and make sure you start it with AI.
And not just in the classroom.
Pardon?
Not just in the classroom.
No, in life. I mean, be a lifelong learner. I tell them you need, though, the value of the human in this role is being a human. It's judgment and it's communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to be able to work with others. You're not going to be just going to be you and your agents, and that's your career. So, this is, for people who've grown up and would prefer to text than talk, you need to find a way to communicate. Those social skills, those human skills are going to be even more important. And then the last thing I tell them, Jim, is at the end of the day, you still have to work hard. This is, we've all had to do this in different generations, in different domains, with different technologies. But to me, that's kind of the common thread for them. And opportunities are there. Opportunities are there. Look what you've created. Look what you created. It's incredible.
But dramatically being impacted by AI today. So this old dog is struggling to be that lifelong learner. Frankly, I think that's been my approach for a long time. But it's exciting for me to try and keep up. The good news is, as one of my board members, Shelley Palmer, said to me a year ago, more than a year ago now, the great thing about these new AI tools and these large language models are you can sit down and ask them, how do I best learn how to use you? You don't need a manual because it doesn't come with one. But you can ask it to start to design a course to teach you how to use it. Here's the things I do every day. How can I use you to do those better, more efficiently, more quickly? And so it can teach you how to teach you.
Yeah, I don't think we used to think of prompt as a verb. But it's going to be a very important verb. And then the next question is how do you pay for all this, right? What are the business models that are going to start to show up for those of us running enterprises, but even in your personal life? Because when you look at the investments going on for compute, for the infrastructure that's keeping this, that's now being invested, for the power that's being required, and we're business people. That there's got to be a business model for that, and I think that's going to be fascinating to watch that versus the SaaS models where we paid for seats. It's going to get really interesting to see the business models emerge simultaneously with the technology model.
Judy, I'm already hearing around our shop in the last month or maybe 6 weeks about the cost of tokens. We're not paying we won't be paying by the seat going forward, but but people are being concerned. Wait a minute, you're using a lot of tokens. Okay, help me to understand what is a token. How do we pay for that? What? Or we have this one group, and they're really running ahead here on cost more than we anticipated. So it's never untaxed.
No, well, there's always a cost. And the
Yes.
question is, what does that cost look like? Is it an expense? Can you capitalize it? Can you negotiate it? It's, I think that part's going to get fascinating too and create opportunity for people.
You know, when you made a comment early on about the fact that in the 1950s you entered an elevator, there would likely be an operator in that elevator. And I think that's a great lesson for us to think about today, except that, as you point out, the AI disruption is not just one area, elevator operators, it's so many areas. So that's what makes it challenging and hard for us to understand. But I read an article back at the end of last year about the big business opportunity is the sale of time. And they made the case that over historically how changes have come about in the, let's call it 100 years ago, when most people were working on a farm. They got up early in the morning. They had to feed their animals, and they went to bed. They were done when light set, when the sun set, and weren't up much longer than that. In the meantime, we thought, well, how could we disrupt that? And what would they do with their time if they didn't have to feed all those animals and there was some kind of automatic feeding? Well, we created tourism, we created eating out in restaurants, we created the entertainment industry, all of these things to use our time. So I think if we step back and think about the changes that have happened and the consequences, it just makes us uncomfortable when so many things are changing at the same time, and we really can't get our minds around the fact that we may have some more time, but boy, do we know how to fill that time gap.
Yeah, and in a business environment, Jim, yeah, I can relate personally as well. But in a business environment, when you create that time, and we like to talk about it as saying creating oxygen through productivity and everything else, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to deploy that capital? And the capital may not be financial, but how are you going to deploy that capital towards your vision, your mission? I mean, just and I don't think we've had as much luxury in figuring that out over the past few decades as we're going to have over the next few years. What does your enterprise look like? And if you're not focused because you don't have to spend time on these 10 things, what are your priorities? And I think it's going to be a great time to do that as long as you go in with a mindset that says, um, yeah, this isn't about shrinking the company, right? This isn't about, you know, eliminating 5,000 roles. It's what can I have those 5,000 people do that's even more impactful?
Judy, you have a unique seat at the table, and I wonder, you mentioned housing before, and almost every market that you deal in, there's a housing shortage. I still have in my mind the fanciful, perhaps, idea that a small single family home, everyone has an opportunity to get one, and a family lives in that, becomes part of their community, and they're focused singularly on raising their children the best possible way they can, so that they become productive members of a community, and their extended families go on to give them great pleasure and satisfaction. But you mentioned that more and more housing is not that; it's vertical. So if you were the housing czar of New York City, a place you visit frequently, what would you do to create more housing? Because right now we're hearing two things: housing's too expensive, we're going to freeze the rents. And then I talk to people who are in the business of redeveloping or developing housing. They say, well, that's all well and good. You're going to freeze my rents. But now you just made it economically impossible for me to invest any of my time or financial resources toward housing because I can't get a return on my dollar. So it sounds good to say we're not going to raise rents or we're going to freeze rents. But on the other hand, that is certain to damage the housing stock. If you're the housing czar, having the seat at the table that you do, what would you suggest they think about to create more housing besides the office conversions that you're involved
Yeah, and again, there's lots of office conversions going on, but they have unique challenges and opportunities because no one wants to be towards the center of the building. They want daylight.
in? Yes.
So there's some unique challenges there, but everyone's working through that really well. I think what I'd tell you is how we focus on a lot of challenges is, over time, um, people put legislation in place, they put codes in place, they put fixes in place, in a business to deal with a situation. But no one ever takes those away. No one ever, things compound, and all of a sudden you have a very complex approach to something without looking at the end-to-end process. I would tell you, I'd step back and say, just clean sheet of paper. What do you need end to end to create, and let's just call it affordable housing, even though affordable means something different to everyone. But what does it take, without saying, well, there's 6 different departments that all legislate, that all regulate, that all do, everyone's got their own piece of this. We've kind of created, and it happens in businesses, right? And you look at any operating practice you have, any playbook, it never gets leaned out, right? It never gets smaller. It's always just, it's additive. Well, here's another initiative. Here's something else you have to comply with. I think I'd step back and almost like you do zero-based costing, say, how would you do zero-based housing development? And then only add in what's, you have to create some threshold that said, okay, yeah, I know I need safety. I mean, only add in what you need going forward, because it's not unique to any city or any process or any entity. That's just how things happen over time. And I've always found, if you can go back to zero-based and figure out what's the objective, what's the end-to-end process, the quickest way from the start to the finish, again, and then layer on only what's needed versus what has historically been added or special interests or anything else. There's a lot that can get accomplished.
Sound like an engineer, Judy.
Sorry. still, yeah.
We need more engineers and less people who are just on a plain political path. But you're right. No one gets any credit for removing 10 laws that don't make sense anymore. They only assign their name to the new legislation. It sits on top of all the other legislation. Well, Judy Marks, it sounds to me like you have a little bit of a dichotomy here. That is, you don't want anyone to ever think about how they're getting around on an escalator or on a elevator. You don't want them to give it a second thought, but you want your people to think all the time about how people appreciate and differentiate your product from anyone else's out there. So it sounds to me like, I want you to think about us, but really I don't want you to ever have to think about us.
It's true. This is, again, such an iconic brand that, people, they depend on us. But again, most people don't think about our products and our services until there's an issue. Yeah. So, usually, and that's typically stressful if they're caught in, if they're entrapped, if the elevator stops working and they're in it. It's a very stressful situation for people. And we now have a solution that, at least when they, instead of picking up the phone, they can, as they push the button, they see a live operator from our Otis line, and they calm them down and they walk them through that before building maintenance can be called, or the fire department, if that's the case, depending where you are in the world. Yep. So again, it's think about music in elevators. The reason we put music in was because when we took the elevator operators out, we wanted people to think about something else. We didn't want them in a quiet box, if you will. There's
music tells us how to feel.
So a lot of it's psychology too, but we're really proud of the role we've played in cities in the world. We're proud of what we do. I couldn't be more proud of our colleagues and the commitment they make every day. And I think we're going to be here for a long time and continue to innovate.
I suspect you will, Judy Marks. You are a remarkable leader, and the people at Otis, and in particular your shareholders, are happy that you're at the helm.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Judy. Good to learn a lot more about this amazing company, a 173-year-old brand very soon, and I suspect there's another 173 coming. Great to learn so much more about you and Otis.